Face-to-face conversations.
I think it's the whole aspect of maintaining connection. It is one thing to see a text. We usually say a text is like somebody without emotion.
Okay.
Yeah, so sometimes
emojis won't work.
Emojis won't work.
Okay.
There's just something beautiful about seeing someone, and that's we usually say. Probably more than 75% of communication is body language. And so when you actually get to see someone, you get to understand better where they are at.
Yes.
I think if you go principally back to marriage by definition, Genesis 2:24, a man shall leave his mother and father, and he shall cleave to his wife.
Yes.
And then the two shall become one.
Yeah.
So when we go back there are two principles there that are really critical. One is a priority of marriage. You know, somebody is leaving everything else, what they've known, what they've loved all their life. They're going away now to be with this other person. So that priority of marriage is so crucial. So even in long distance relationship, it's very important to still prioritize that union, that oneness. And so working towards togetherness, that word cleave is really loaded. Siku ingine tutakuja kuunpack.
Yes,
just to
unpack the cleave.
What does it mean to cleave? But essentially that process of being connected, and it's an active process. And so when you are living far apart, even the more the need to really intentionally work towards truly being one. So cleaving, connection is one thing, but the other aspect is growth. And so you have to be growing together. We usually say if a marriage is not growing, it's dying. So if you are living in different spaces, how then do you still grow together? How do you still maintain that connection although you're physically apart?
Yes.
And so those are the paradigms and the dynamics that are unique to couples that are living in long distance relationship. And that's why, as Esther was talking about the communication aspect, it's really foundational. We usually say if you don't have a fantastic communication rubric, you should not even think of a long distance relationship because you'll have trouble from the get-go. So the communication has to be not only frequent, it also needs to be open, transparent. So it's not just talking frequently, but the nature of conversation, the nature of engagement needs to go to that level where it's truly open, transparent, and even some of the uncomfortable aspects, like you're feeling maybe trust issues, you're feeling jealous, you're feeling insecure. Those aspects then would need to come through. So I think the couples that will make it in a long distance relationship are those that have really dug deep the wells of communication.
Speaking about communication, when we had this conversation earlier with our audience, some people were saying, I will not let my wife or I will not let my spouse, leave away from home or even work a different shift. Actually had people saying, no, my wife cannot work at night. So how do you address such situations even before we now get to a point where they are now actually long distance? How do you deal with that?
Before I even answer that, I'm just wondering whether it was only gentlemen commenting.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing a lot, I'll not let my wife, I don't know whether the wives are letting the husband.
It's both.
I assume it's both ways. But I think what I could say to that is it goes back to communication. This is not just happening. Even at the workplace, you don't just wake up. Okay, it could happen sometimes that you find that you're on this shift and maybe you're not initially aware. But I think even at the point of getting married, if you're already working,
Yes.
or at the point at which that happens, if you're already married, you still need to have a conversation as to what the expectations should be. And if such a scenario arises, how do you handle it? Because then you should be able to agree, how can we navigate this? Because I mean, if you're both working and you need to be working to be able to sustain your lifestyles and you know, be comfortable, then you need to agree what are the boundaries. If one of you has to work at night, what does that mean? There's the issue of you have kids, you know, life has to continue, they're going to school, someone has to take care of them. And then you have to look at your, you know, your professions. Who is it that has more leeway to be able to handle some things much better? So instead of feeling like you're being robbed of something, it means you have to be very intentional as a couple and discuss these things, because if you do not discuss them, there's going to be resentment, and it means that maybe one person feels like they're carrying a bigger load than the other in terms of making the family run together. So it just boils down to negotiations, communication, negotiation, so that someone doesn't feel like there's a lot of expectations laid on them, but there's no agreement. You know, when you negotiate, then you get to see, okay, you end up with a win-win kind of deal. No one is losing. So it benefits you as a couple and as a family. And I think it goes back to something you introduced at the beginning, what my husband was saying about sort of, okay, in the workplace, call it presentism, you know, you're there but you're really not connecting. You're living in the same location, but it's like you're long distance, you know. Like there's a time we're doing an event in the US and people are sharing with us, sometimes the schedules are so crazy that, you know, they don't have house helps, most of them. It's almost unaffordable. And so when one is getting into the house, the other one is leaving, is like, chakula iko hapo, you know, you just kind of hand over and then leave. There's no marriage there. So sometimes could it be that you can live on less? Like financially, you know, you let go of some opportunities and you take a little less, so you have more time for the family, which means you also earn less, but you're still able to meet your needs. So those are very important things, because you could earn more and lose your marriage, and lose your family. So there has to be that balancing act.
Absolutely. I'll just comment something there before we run on, because when I heard you talking about I will not let, and I kept hearing the eyes. And I did not hear the we. And I think many times when we look at marriage that way, it is like, this is my thing, that is your thing, I will not allow this. It means the people have never really become one. Remember, God out of Adam made two. Now it is our job to get these two and make them back to one. And so the more we think in terms of we, the greater the impact we have in the world. And the greater we learn some of the things to let go. So always think of marriage as the client. So what is the best thing for our marriage, not what is the best thing for me. So once you start looking at it that way, you will realize there's some opportunities to let go of now, but later on you even get more blessings because now you're doing it together. So we say the only way you win is when you win together, and that should be the goal.
Okay, if I don't know, is that an ideal time, maybe when a relationship or marriage is mature enough for people to work different locations? Is that an ideal time, we can say, maybe after this number of years or after this period? Or it can start immediately as we start?
I'll run away with that one in the beginning. I would say there's never an ideal time. And honestly, we really discourage long distance relationship. As much as possible, avoid. There's so much beauty in being together and dealing with issues as they happen day by day. You know, there are little nuances that go on day by day. So as much as possible, live together. If it must happen that you be apart, we think the earlier it happens in the relationship, the more dangerous, just because there are certain probably foundational aspects you're still developing. In the scriptures, we know a young couple would be given a year. You know, they would not serve in the army, they would go make the wife of your youth happy. But essentially it was giving them time to really connect and get to know each other. So I think the earlier it happens, the worse. It's better when you're a little more experienced in the game. But best case scenario is best avoided.
Okay.
Yeah. What did you say, babe?
Yeah, that's very true. I think I'll just give an example. I remember when we were in Australia, we met this couple. They started dating. They're actually Kenyans living in Australia, but it wasn't like that from the beginning. I think they met via friends, and then one of them relocated to Australia. And how they managed to go through that relationship, because they ended up getting married and still were separated, by distance. And so what they did a lot of FaceTime. The gentleman says the lady would even be going shopping. She literally shops with him. She's like, yeah, you see, this is what I'm having for dinner. Okay, now I'm cooking. Like, they would spend hours and hours together, on video conversations. And so by the time they were, because that took like a period of at least 6 months, by the time they were getting married, they felt like they really knew each other. The other advantage is that there was no opportunity to fall into sin. Like, some boundaries are automatically set just because of that. But they got to really connect. And when they got married, then again, COVID happened, and there was a lot of restrictions in Australia. And so they after they got married, there was a challenge. One of them, the one who was in Kenya, getting a visa. That took quite a while. Eventually it worked out, but they continued with that. But midway, they would travel to country. Let me not name the details; might become too much for people to figure out which is. But they met somewhere in Asia, a different country where visa was not an issue. They met there, spent some time together. Then one went back to Australia, the other one came back to Kenya. Then eventually they were able to end up being together. That's to say, for them to have started with distance in the picture, they worked so hard. And they say, even in the earlier days of marriage, they realized their conversation was so easy because they'd already developed that aspect.
All right.
So, of course, but you have to be very intentional, whether you start with distance or distance comes in midway. There's no ideal time to have the distance in the picture, but is that you still have to be very intentional to ensure that emotionally you're connecting, spiritually you're connecting. Especially for us people of faith, it's very important that you're praying together, sharing what you're learning from studying the word of God, because that aspect is also very important. Because faith, people who are Christians or they tend to connect even deeper when you bring the spiritual aspects into the picture. I think I might have missed the last bit of the question, but that's what I would say for now.
All right. Well put. How do you deal with the issue of differing commitment between couples, so that one thinks, so long as I'm doing this, I am committed, and another one thinks, no, you have to go a notch higher or something like that? How do you address that?
From the very beginning, marriage is a covenant. And I think when you understand the true meaning of covenant, you realize that marriage is a very, very grave thing to get into. So even the disciples, when Jesus started talking of what a marriage is, they said, can anyone really be able to do this? Like, it looks, it's crazy. Because in God's eyes, when you get into a covenant, essentially you're saying, the only thing that will separate me from this person is death. Literally, like, let death happen to me if I break this covenant. So it's that heavy and that deep. Now, when it comes to commitment, if you look at it from the lens of covenant, it means I'm putting the interests of this other person before mine. Anytime. That essentially is the meaning of commitment when you look at it from the lens of covenant. And so when you think about your commitment, your relationship that way, it means that there is no limit to what you are able to put for the sake of your relationship. If you can die for it, literally, and that is the ask. When God is looking at we as husbands and saying, love your wives like Christ loved the church and died for the so essentially, literally, it means putting your life down for the sake of your partner. But if you're to break it down now in practical aspects, we've found a lot of troubles in marriage are because of unmet expectations.
Okay.
And you have unmet expectations because of uncommunicated expectations. And so if you have to understand each other well, you have to communicate the expectations so that even commitment is communicated. What is your expectation of me, commitment-wise?
Right.
So when you bring those things on table, you find a lot of trouble happens in the assumption zone. We say, ask more than you assume.
Okay.
Just hold it right there, Dr. Ari. Sorry to cut you short. We need to take a very quick business break, but we'll be back in a few. Stay with us. Please hold the thought.
Sharon and Favored Frank on breakfast.
Listen and live.
The Business Line.
These doctors Esther and Keith Dindi, who are helping us with the conversation. And Sharon, Esther was telling us more about.
It was actually Keith.
Yeah, Keith. Yeah.
Yeah. He was talking about the issue of what was the question?
Yeah,
it just disappeared on me.
Yeah, no, I was talking about the aspect of
commitment, right?
Yes, yes, and just communicating that you ask more than you assume.
Yes,
because if you assume things, especially in this area where someone can start to feel maybe some insecurity. You are meant to have called this hour, it never happened. What could have happened?
Yes.
Could there be something going on? You are seen in an image with someone else. And you're saying, hey, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah. So
The Photoshop.
So the importance of really talking again and again and again. And if I just delve in that aspect of insecurity, because it's a huge thing when people are dating or married and they're staying in different places, it starts with the heart. It always starts with the heart. It's a heart thing. And so guard your heart above all things, for from it flow the rivers of life.
Yeah.
And so we usually say, if you really guard your relationship with God first, because remember, marriage is not just between the two of you, it's a covenant relationship made with God as a witness. And so the more you guard your relationship with God, it actually protects you a lot wherever you are. So firstly it's to God, but also just some practical aspects in terms of clear boundaries that you place,
Yes.
especially from an emotional standpoint, because we all need a bit of an emotional crutch now and again. So if your partner is not around, you can very easily find that there's someone else who starts to fill in those shoes.
Yes.
So it's important to have a lot of black and white boundaries of what is and is not acceptable, so that you don't slowly, imperceptibly start to fall into an emotional affair with someone else.
Yeah, and I think if I remember the question, it was an issue of having sort of different ambitions
Yeah.
and feeling, the couples, the spouses, or the partners feeling like they're not really on the same page.
Yes.
And I think one of the biggest problems or challenges in marriage or relationships is selfishness. Sometimes if you're too driven that you only regard your own ambitions or your own desires without considering the interest of your partner, there's going to be a problem. And it goes back to what you were saying, that especially in marriage, you move from I to we. So every time you're making a decision and considering something, you're thinking about us. How is it going to impact us? And that means that you have to involve your partner in this particular case to be able to arrive at a decision that really serves both of you. And that means sometimes you might have, you probably want to pursue further studies, and that means, if you both want to do that at the same time, is it practical? Is it feasible? Does it serve your family, depending on what stage you are at, because there are different seasons in life? And that might mean that you have to compromise. Compromise is the wrong word. You negotiate and arrive at an agreement as, okay, so what is the most ideal time for me to do this or for you to do this that will actually be most conducive for the two of us? So really, for one to feel loved, it's very important for them to feel cared for, to feel considered. And so your thoughts have to, you need to feel that you're understood, that you're actually heard. And when there's an issue of distance, then the more important it is that to have these conversations. And some of them needs physical meetups as much as possible. If you're within the same country, travel, get to connect. And I think when we talk about long distance relationships, you also have to consider if it's within certain radius, you have to meet more frequently, maybe 2 times a week,
Yes.
or once a month. If it's out of the country, it could be we could be talking about months, but those are very important things. And then as much as possible, there has to be an agreement as to when is this ending. You can't go for 6 months study and then while there you enroll in another course for 1 year.
Yes.
And now you're telling, hey, I've signed up for this. And no, that is actually disrespectful. So there has to be clear timelines, and if that has to be adjusted, it has to be in agreement. Otherwise, someone is going to feel slighted. Finally, I would say this about relationship. Now, besides marriage, there's the issue of relationships. If you really feel that you're consistently having different goalposts, that you're not being able to come to an agreement, you don't have a place that you actually meet at and, feel that you are going towards the same direction, then it's time to reconsider that relationship. It's time to decide whether this is worth fighting for or you just need to go separate ways. Because if you're having certain struggles when you're just dating, then it's going to be worse if you get into marriage before you lay the foundations right. So it's good to decide whether this is working or it is not.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, well put. We have a couple of questions that have come in. So if you could allow us in a minute or two, we can answer as many as we can. And then we will have your final comments. I have been separated with my wife for about a year now because of financial difficulty. And there is no communication. How do I go about this? Please help this gentleman.
There's a bit of clarity on the question. Maybe we might not be able to get because separated. I don't know if it's within the same country or in terms of distance.
Maybe somebody trying to they decide you can go to a countryside. I remain in the city. I work because I'm not able to take care of you while here.
One of the things we guys have discovered, and this has been our own experience, even when we started life, it is great to be in the valley together. Yeah, there's
Okay.
just something amazing about going through the
Hardships
the rain.
together.
Yeah, being beaten up by the rain. Pamoja.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just thinking yesterday, actually, the first place where we stayed, as we started married, I looked at our pantry in our house now is the size of
Oh, that house.
We were the vegetables.
Wow.
literally.
And we were happy.
Yeah. The issue. So I think the togetherness is so crucial that it's better to go through the way David said. I would rather be a guard at the the door of the house of the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's better to even have quote unquote that lower standard of living, but do it together.
Okay.
The more you do it together, you realize the more you can then start to grow, and you really value those days, so that your spouse in the village has no clue really of the hardships like some of the demands they might make. It's because they don't understand.
Yes.
But the fact that they see you're waking up at 5, you're struggling to get a meal in the day, there's just a perspective they have. What us guys have realized, do life pamoja.
Okay.
Then slowly God will bless you. There are scenarios where true ni lazima watu, like as you said, in the army and things like that. But in terms of economic aspects,
Yes.
the wisdom that God has given the ladies, for example, Esther would get, those days there were these cabbages for just like 5 shillings.
Yes.
For cabbages, and
Back
those
in the day.
Yeah,
Wow.
and there was a way that cabbage would be made to stretch out.
Yes.
In fact, when God started blessing us, I said I never want to eat cabbage again. in my
Ate a lot
life.
of it.
We ate a lot of it. But she
It was
knew
in the
how
bloodstream.
to stretch the coins.
Yeah.
And so I think and that is what marriage is. That is what marriage should be about.
Yes.
It's not the exciting or whatever, but it's doing life at whatever stage of life you are at.
Wow.
And, there's a lot of danger in that. I actually have real life examples, and I wouldn't list them because there are quite a number of people who have separated, or not really separated. The wife lives in the village, the guy is in the city hustling, and so she's in the village running the home, and he visits once in a while, not because they couldn't really do life better. And with time they discover, hey, there's also another family in the city. So there's this wife you left at home,
Yes.
technically just to run the home and ensure that you have one, and this was for financial reasons, quote unquote, and you still had enough money to have another
wife.
one in the city. So of course that's an issue of integrity, but that's something that actually happens. So there's not much sincerity in saying that it's not possible to do life together, hustle together. But I know for someone to have asked that question, they have their own unique circumstances and they are sincere in their question. But I would really beseech them to dig deep and see, can they just hustle together until they make it? It's possible. And women, most of us, we have a way of stretching that coin.
Right.
Yes.
And making it count more.
Yeah.
And maybe also look for things we can do together, like you're doing a small job here, I also do something else. We bring our resources together and we grow together. It is doable.
Wow, thank you so much, Esther and Keith. We could go on, but time fails us. So I don't know what we do with all these questions. Maybe, if the Lord allows us, we can have this conversation another day. And then we can have all these questions. I promise we're going to copy them somewhere
Yeah.
so that we make sure that we answer them. And we will let you know when they're coming back.
Yes.
Please give us your final remarks as we wind it up in a few seconds.
Okay, I would say that ideally for marriage to thrive and do well, the two should live together and intentionally be connecting day to day. But circumstances are such that sometimes we find ourselves living in different locations. It's very important that we build trust and ensure that we safeguard that trust and have boundaries to ensure that each partner is feeling emotionally taken care of. And it's important to ensure that we have shared activities, even at that distance, and make efforts to connect physically from moment to moment, depending on how the circumstances allow. And Finally, I would say that you should have an end date, especially unless you're deployed in the military in a different place. But for most people, it's possible to have very clear time limits as to when you're going to be coming back together and live together as a couple. And for those couples who are separated by distance for whatever reason, I wish you all the best, and please be intentional in ensuring that you're connecting spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and work towards connecting physically.
Wow, thank you, Esther. It's time is gone. Keith, we'll leave your passing shot for next time. If you allow us. Let's go with Esther's.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for your time. Our time is gone. We'll see you tomorrow, same time and same place. Bye-bye.